Because if there's ever been a time that people are going to reconsider and reassess their life, it would be now.
Hey, Jeffrey, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Awesome. I am so
Excellent.
excited that we're doing this. Hello, everybody. We are live streaming today, and we have a very, very special guest. We're actually going to be on two platforms today. We're going to be right here live in our Profit First Masterclass group, and we are also streaming to my group too. So this is going to be really, really exciting. And we have a special guest. We have Jeffrey Shaw, and Jeffrey Shaw is the author of this amazing, amazing new book. It's actually one of my favorite books now. It just came out this week on like Tuesday, May 4th, and it's called The Self-Employed Life. Jeffrey, do you mind showing a copy of your book? Because I have a copy, but it's going to show up as clear on my screen because, you know, the technology here on
I
this
love
side.
it. You have like a crystal ball version of it. I like it.
It's an amazing book. Oh my
Thank
gosh, you
you.
guys have got to get it. And I love it because it really gives you an intimate picture of self-employed life, but not only the intimate picture, but how to grow your business as a self-employed person. So I'm super excited about this. Thank you, Jeffrey, for coming on our show today, for really just showing us about your book and really about how to improve our businesses too, right?
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here, and thank you for making this so special and streaming it live. And so I'm psyched. Glad to be here with you and all of you.
Thank you. So Jeffrey, tell me a little bit of the book. Tell me about why this book and like why now?
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, I love the why now question because I have to say I would consider myself most things in my life like my timing is usually off. Like there are very few times in my life where I would say I got the timing just right, but this is probably the first thing in my 36-year career. Like I feel like I got the timing very right. What happened was I started writing this book. I had the concept to write this book before the pandemic. So I started the outline, and I had this concept to write a book about self-employment, and which honestly, Susanne, was the most obvious book for me to write. It's all I've ever known. I've never had a traditional job. I've never received a paycheck. I've been self-employed, finding my own way since the age of 14 years old. Certainly professionally as a registered business since the age of 20. So this is kind of the most obvious topic of all for me to take on. It just never occurred to me before, but I had this idea to write this book. It was before the pandemic. And then, of course, the pandemic hits. So when I was writing the book, I was initially writing for people who are already self-employed. But once, businesses went into lockdown and all the struggle that came with it for small businesses, I worried most about the self-employed businesses because typically in the past, any financial aid that might be available from the government to get people through a crisis, and I've been in business long enough to see a few of them, typically in the past, the support all went to major corporations and at best, small businesses. But small business is determined up to 500 employees, and it usually left out the smallest of businesses, those of us that are self-employed, businesses of one, businesses of 5 or 10. So, then I kind of shifted. I was writing it, thinking about the millions of people who are losing their jobs, because historically speaking, as the rate of unemployment goes up, so does the rate of self-employment. So there are masses of people becoming self-employed or becoming unemployed who would likely turn to self-employment. And then once the book was done, I started then thinking about the large group of people who very well may still have their job, but are reconsidering whether it's the job that makes them happy. Because if there's ever been a time that people are going to reconsider and reassess their life, it would be now. So the timing of why now kind of unfolded in the most amazing way that as this book is coming out, just this past week, I don't think the timing could be better. It's exactly when existing small businesses and self-employed businesses, it's exactly when they need the support. It's at about this time that people who have been trying to recover and get a job again may be giving up on finding a job and choosing to create their own business. And I know for certain, I have a LinkedIn live show called From Corporate Life to Self-Employed Life. And I know for certain there are a lot of people sitting in their corporate jobs that are really reconsidering whether it's making them happy and considering self-employment. So to me, this is a bit of divine timing that, this is when the book was planned to come out. And I do think it is exactly when it's been most needed that I have seen in my decades of being in business. So pretty
I love
excited
it.
about that. Yeah.
I love it. And then it's like, yes, just the right time for sure.
It seems like I said, it's very few things I would say I got the timing right. And this one just seemed to be, but there's a core lesson in that, which I do talk about a lot about how much do we plan our lives these days and how much do we, what I call follow what's unfolding. And I think that's the way to run a business nowadays. I think it's hard to plan. It's hard to plan for any length of time out because we don't know where the world is going. Too much is changing too quick. That I think our best moments, our best creativity, the way we align in the best timing is to follow what's unfolding and to be in the space of paying attention to what people need and what you can do to help and how you can serve and follow that.
I love that. That is amazing. You're right. During this time of the pandemic, it's the first time that really, people that were solopreneurs were actually invited into the fold, right? With the PPP loans and
Yeah.
you actually accepted a Schedule C. I didn't have to have a payroll register or a W-2.
Yeah.
I mean, are you
And
serious? This is
I
Schedule
don't,
C?
yeah, and you're probably one of the few, your industry is probably one of the few people that can understand the historical significance of this. Like this has never happened. It's never, the word self-employment have never been in a piece of US legislation before, right? But here was the challenge. I mean, you know as well as I did, as soon as I received word that these PPPs were going to exist, I was thrilled, but at the same time, I immediately got very protective, as I am of my community, thinking the problem is the government's going to screw this up because they're not going to speak our lingo. They're not going to understand that self-employed people don't think of themselves as getting a paycheck or workers or employees. So they weren't going to speak to us in a way that we would understand that we were eligible for this. And let's face it, self-employed people are so used to taking the hit on the chin, to having all the grit. We don't even know when to accept help, let alone look for help.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And what I like in your book too is you really broke out really the difference of, what self-employed is versus being an entrepreneur. Do you mind if we just dive into that a little bit more and talk about just that term self-employment and
Yeah, I
what it
think,
means?
yeah, and it's definitely one of the missions of the book. Honestly, it was actually originally written in towards the end of the book, but we moved it right up to the front of the book because it's that strong of a mission of the book to actually help self-employed business owners to embrace the term self-employed. And I know for certain that we don't. Self-employed people don't use the term self-employed, and I know that from having done a lot of SEO and keyword research, that in order for me to get SEO on my website, I have to actually keyword and tag it small business. And then when people get there, they realize that I'm specifically for self-employed of small business. But the fact of the matter is people don't, and I'm just as guilty. When I was writing this book, when I started writing it, I went to Amazon, did some due diligence, searched self-employment, what books are out there for self-employed people. The top 10 were all about taxes. And I'm sorry, I know that's your world, but to the self-employed people world, that's boring as hell. Like, I mean, it just doesn't, taxes, that was all the books. But here's what stood out to me, Susanne. I couldn't believe it suddenly occurred to me that it was the first time in my 36 years of being self-employed that I ever even thought to search to find out if there was a book for self-employed people. Right. And I tell my publisher that's going to be our biggest marketing challenges, that self-employed people don't even know to look. So we don't use the term self-employed. So I felt it was critically important to actually break down the meanings and even the vibes of each term, with a goal being let's encourage self-employed business owners to use the term self-employed so that when there is a need, not if, when there is a need in the future for more financial assistance, we can guarantee that we are brought into the fold of getting support specifically for self-employed people. And I truly believe with the expansion of the number of self-employed business owners, I truly believe that's going to be critical because I find it likely in the future that there may be a department for the self-employed separate from the SBA because of the volume. And believe me, the reason that self-employed business owners were brought into the fold for the PPP loans was not because it was an act of kindness. It was because we matter. It's because by numbers, we have a big impact on the economy. So I took it upon myself to kind of break down these terms and make sure that people understood the difference. I think most of us identify with small business. The problem is that small business brings into the fold companies that are far bigger than self-employed businesses. Entrepreneur was a tough one to take on because I love the term entrepreneur. I think it's got a vibe to it, right? It's kind of cool. Like I feel cool saying I'm an entrepreneur. So there's nothing wrong with it. The challenge with it though, is that it's very broad, and it also doesn't describe some important elements that I think self-employed does. As soon as you tell somebody you're self-employed, they know that there's a certain lifestyle to that, and there's a business model to that. And even there's certain taxation that comes with that. So I feel like when we use the term self-employed, more so than small business and entrepreneur, we're helping people understand our life, that when we are self-employed, we pour our heart and souls into that business. That's why I called my book The Self-Employed Life. It wasn't like the manual for the self-employed, right? I went with the self-employed life because that's just our reality. Our reality is that when we're self-employed, our hearts and souls are in it. It's so much a part of our life. There's a very little division between our business and our life. So I think when we describe ourselves as being self-employed, we're helping people understand who we are, how we live, and there's also a business model to that. And as you know, a tax structure. And it's important for people to understand that too, I think. And I think it's going to be even more important to our future safety.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think one thing I liked about your book is you made it self-employed a cool thing. I remember when I first started my business, people were like, "Who do you work for?" And like there was a sense of shame going,
Mhm.
"Oh, I just work for me or Susanne Mariga," But you actually, you made it like this banter, you know what I mean? This like, flag of honor, to be self-employed. So that was really, really
And,
neat about
and
that.
I think it has on its own as well. I don't want to take full credit for that. I think it has become very cool to say you're self-employed. I mean, why shouldn't it? I mean, that should be absolutely a badge of honor. I think the reverse has sort of happened. I think entrepreneurship, or just to say I'm an entrepreneur, is so vague. There are two, like I said, I still think it's a cool term, but I've heard two types of negative feedback on the term entrepreneur. One is that people interpret entrepreneur with hustle, and they interpret hustle not with the hard work that it takes, but that little creepiness to the hustle. And the other thing that entrepreneur as a term, can sometimes lead people to believe, that you're just using that term because you're in between jobs. So again, I don't think there's anything wrong. Like I said, I often still refer to myself as an entrepreneur. I think it's a cool term. I'm a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine. Like I still fully embrace the term. I just think when you're also self-employed, it's important to make that distinction, and we should wear it as a badge of honor, if you will.
Definitely, I think so. So tell me, Jeffrey, what is the biggest challenge that's involved with being self-employed, and how do the self-employed or entrepreneurs overcome that?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many of them, right? I would say the biggest challenge is understanding the connection, or managing the connection between who we are personally, our personal lives, and the business. Now, the old phrase in business that, business is business, don't take it personal, doesn't apply when you're self-employed, but probably not for the reasons that people think. I think when people say that term, have the idea that when you're self-employed, there's no division between your personal life and your business. It's not as though our feelings get hurt so easily when somebody, yes, we put our heart and soul and we take things that we do personally, but we're not dainty people. I mean, by nature, if you're becoming self-employed, you've got pretty thick skin. It also doesn't mean that there's no division between your personal life and your business, because I hope there is, for your own well-being and sense of self-care, that there should be a division. I think what most people are surprised at, and becomes one of the biggest challenges, is how connected your success is to your personal development, right? So what I think is one of the greatest challenges is that we by nature apply a lot of action. We take a lot of action, we apply a lot of strategies, we put in a lot of work, we put in a lot of hours without realizing that there's a direct connection to your personal development, and your level of success will be relative to how much you personally develop. And I look at this in terms of capacity. So when you want more in your business, when you want more success, you want more money, you want more clients, when you want more in your business, you actually have to first turn to yourself, develop yourself personally to increase the capacity to receive that more that you want in your business. So for example, if you want more success, you want to go to the next level in your self-employed business, you have to do the work to feel deserving of that next level of success, right? You can't try to stuff more success into your business, but still hold on to a mindset that you don't deserve more. You have to step into your next level of deservedness in order to apply the action and have the action work. You have to get out of, we constantly have to get out of the way any ways that we are limiting our thinking or limiting what we think we're capable of. We have to constantly get that level out of the way in order to go to the next level. So I think probably what surprises most people is how interconnected who we are as people and our personal development and how deeply connected it is to our success. The problem is when we keep, the reason I so often hear people feel like a hamster on a wheel, they feel like they're working really hard, but hardly getting ahead. It is likely because they're applying more action than they are prepared to actually receive. They're holding themselves back somehow. And I see this firsthand with a lot of my coaching clients who will reach out to me, hire me to coach them, and yet constantly express that they're overwhelmed. And I will have to point out to them, do you see that you can't be overwhelmed with what you have and expect to receive more? So the extra work you're putting in to go to the next level doesn't have any place to go, because at the same time, you're reinforcing in your own mind that you're overwhelmed. You can't handle what you have. How are you supposed to handle the next level? And that, I think, is the biggest challenge. And the solution to that is you have to do the personal work. I mean, I will say anytime I've wanted to go to the next level of my business, I first turn to myself and look at what's the next level of my personal growth. What's the next level of me thinking more expansively, less limited, and then apply the action. And that, I don't think, is a connection that we innately get until we become self-employed and somebody points it out to us.
Oh yeah, it's not an obvious link, and
No.
it's not something that people talk about.
No,
That
and it's not the truth. It's not, that doesn't exist in other businesses. It's not the way big business is. So that is one of the most unique characteristics, I believe. And I think that's even unique to being self-employed, different than even being a small business, because a small business can have up to 500 employees. So you're not going to have that same experience, that same interconnectedness with the owner and the growth of the business as you will when you are a small self-employed business.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I love that you make that mark that, a lot of time is ourselves holding ourselves back,
Yeah.
and, it's something that you don't realize on your own. And that's what I love about your book is, there's such a big, there was such a big, nice, generous part that was really just focused on just personal development, right? And defining what
Yeah.
you wanted and really going after that. So thank you for bringing that to the industry and through to, just really to the world, because nobody's really talking about that, Jeffrey.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the unique aspects of being self-employed. It really is. I mean, I always say it's no accident that self-employed begins with self, right? I mean, it's not by coincidence that it really does take our self-development to get to the next level of our own business success. And, and to do so with results in mind, right? I mean, let's say we all want, we're by nature ambitious. When I say by nature, if you choose to become self-employed, you are by nature, not everybody is by nature naturally ambitious, but if you choose to become self-employed, you are by nature ambitious. So, undoubtedly you're going to put in the effort, but it's really important to actually put in the effort also into the personal development that you need.
Definitely. So one of the things that I'm really excited about your background too, Jeffrey, is, you are a marketer, right? You are a marketer. And, Jeffrey, for you guys that don't know, he has another amazing book out too. It's been out for a while called Lingo. And if you guys know me, I love lingo, right? About really talking of the language of your target audience, using the words that they use, the expressions that they use. Well, all that all comes from Jeffrey Shaw.
Well, thank you.
I just borrow it and plagiarize it, but that's all Jeffrey Shaw. And, one of the things that that's done differently when you're self-employed, when you're a business, a small business, right? Is how you market is going to be different than
Yeah.
what your larger brands are going to be able to do that. So I want to know from you, what are some ways that as a small business, a self-employed person, what's the best way to market in order to start to really grow our businesses and our brands?
Yeah. I think it's true in life, and let alone, I think it's very true in business when you're self-employed, is that almost always the best strategies for us are the opposite of what everybody else is doing. I mean, you just look at what the rest of the world is doing and think, but I also think it's important to trust your own instincts. And when I first started speaking, I couldn't believe how many people would come up to me and say something along the lines of, "Thank you for giving me permission." And I at first wasn't sure what they thought I was giving them permission for, but what I realized is that I was giving them permission to be in business in a way that actually has always felt instinctually better to them, but they fought against that instinct because it didn't seem like it was the way it's supposed to be done. And you know, so one of the concepts in the book that I'm most excited to introduce is what I call hug marketing. And here's I'll get to more specifics, but here's, I think, an important thing to understand about marketing when you're self-employed. And that is that more than likely you are in a relationship-based business, not a transactional-based business. And most of the world is transactional business. You walk in, there's a transaction, you walk out. Our businesses are almost entirely based on relationship building, right? And that relationship is going to lead possibly to referrals. And it's also going to lead to that client becoming an ongoing client. So when you are a relationship-based business, you need to think differently. So what I introduced in the book, this idea of hug marketing, is turning the idea of a marketing funnel kind of upside down. And as you know from having read lingo, I am very particular about the energy of words, because the energy of words, how something is said, has a huge impact on people. I mean, you can say the same words, but presented with a different energy, and it can mean something entirely different to people. I actually did a little experiment on social media with this, kind of tied into the personal development too. I put a post out on Facebook and I asked people, I said, if I said to you in a rather aggressive tone, "You're going to get what you deserve," how do you interpret that? Right? And most people were like, "I'm in trouble. It's going to be bad." And I'm like, "Why?" And they said, "Well, because you said it in an aggressive tone." And I said, "Well, why shouldn't I say to you just as aggressively, 'You're going to get what you deserve,' meaning you're going to get all that you deserve. You're going to get the abundance, the business, why shouldn't that be said every bit as aggressively as it might sound like a threat?" Right? So you can say the exact same thing, but the energy of the words can really change how you interpret it. And that's how I feel about a marketing funnel. Because if you just look at the pure shape of a funnel, it's wide and open at the top, and you could even say loving and welcoming at the top, right? Only to squeeze people through a small hole as they get closer. Now, I understand the concept of a marketing funnel is to take people from one step to another. We all get that, but I always felt like there had to be a better way, because to me, there is an energy behind running your business in a way where you're smiling and opening at the beginning of the funnel, but you have this kind of almost evil goal to kind of narrow it down and get them to where you want them to go. So I looked for an energetic shift to that was more closely aligned with the hearts and purpose behind self-employed businesses. And I created what I call hug marketing, which instead of a visual funnel is a series of concentric circles. So it's one circle inside of another. The goal being the center, which is the hug, because all the other circles go around it. And it should be the goal of every self-employed business that is relationship-based, to build a relationship with your customers that you can't imagine if you were to see each other in person that you wouldn't hug, when we can all hug again, which will hopefully be soon, right? But that's the goal, which is, if you look at the series of circles, goes from lurkers, which are your outermost circle. Your lurkers are people that are watching you from afar. They're probably followers on social media. They're watching you, but you don't really know them. You certainly don't know them by name. And then there are your engaged circle, right? So those are people that kind of step up and they start connecting with, I'm sorry, before that, to become curious. They go from lurkers to curious. So once they've been lurking and watching you for a while, they get curious. So they take a little bit of a step in and then they become engaged, right? That's when they start interacting with your social media, perhaps, right? There starts to being a little bit of a conversation. Next circle in is when they become connected. And that's a vital stage because that's likely when they have opted into an email list. That's when they've invited a two-way conversation because up till now, they've sort of been watching you and maybe engaging a little bit, but now they're inviting a two-way conversation, and that's at the connected stage. It's from there we hope to convert them from connected to becoming customers, okay? That's, for a lot of businesses, that seems to be the ultimate goal, but it shouldn't be. Because gaining the customer shouldn't be the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is the next level in, which is the hug customer. Those are the customers that you're going to work with time and time again. They're going to become loyal. They're going to become your biggest advocates. Like I said, you can't imagine seeing them in person and not hugging them. So there's a much deeper relationship than even just being a customer. So the idea of, if a business embraces the idea of hug marketing, I know it changes your perspective on how you see marketing from something you're putting out and an audience that you're targeting to instead taking responsibility for understanding that there are people starting way out in the outer circles, lurking and watching you, that becomes your responsibility to build the relationship that encourages people to take a step, one step at a time. I even love the way it flips the burden of responsibility in marketing from it not being something your customers or prospective customers are supposed to respond to, but instead it shifts the burden of responsibility to you feeling like you need to do the work to get people to come closer to you. So really excited about that. And it's already been really well received, but I think it's going to be a highlight of the book, honestly, the hug marketing.
Oh yeah, that is a very neat concept, hug marketing. And you're right, that's what the self-employed can do really well is that hug marketing. You can't get that from the big brands like Procter and Gamble. There's no hug there as you buy your Tide and walk out the door. But you're definitely going to get that, on the personal side. And I've been thinking about just even contractors that we've worked with. It's so hard to end engagements with like contractors because it's like any engagements with your employees, like your family. So you're right, that hug marketing is so critical and really a competitive advantage. I know one of the things I liked about your book, Jeffrey, too, is when you're marketing and you're self-employed, go contra market, right? Go the opposite way that everybody else is going. And you talk about in your book, industry, like specifically the financial service industry. You said you love us because we're so stiff and boring.
I don't know if I said it that way, but
use better words. We were fitting our industry norm, right? There's an industry behavior that the world is used to us portraying. And actually what we really need to do is be more out of ourselves, right? And not be so stiff, be more engaging, be more entertaining, maybe be a little bit outside the norm. So like that was awesome how you said that.
Well, I want to clarify because I don't want people to dislike. No, so it's not that you're all boring and stiff. The fact of the matter is the financial industry is one of, if not the most emotionally driven industry there is. Like, what do couples fight the most about? It's one of the most anything to do with money is one of the most emotionally driven topics there is. And yet 99% of the financial industry's websites are boring and unemotional. And that's why I love working with people in the financial industry. And I've had the good fortune to work with plenty of them. And I'll give you an example. I'm working with a firm based in California right now that I'm rebranding their whole business and their website. They focus on really retirement. But as soon as I looked at their website and their marketing material, I said, you're marketing death, and it's just not appealing. And yet it's the norm. It is the norm of the financial industry when it comes to retirement. Like, save now because you're going to be dead in 10 years. Like there's this fear. It's like, the problem is that doesn't work anymore because people in their 50s, 60s, even 70s actually believe they have a lot of life left, right? They're living. Whether it's they have a lot of life left, whether it is a number of years or just the vitality they have within the side themselves. So it's not, you don't want to be marketing death. You don't so we're flipping it completely to, and it's working so well. And the whole executive team just loves it because honestly, the executive team is the age group that they're marketing to. And as soon as I started talking about rebranding it towards, it's not about life ending, it's about living life. It's about having a lot of life left. I mean, all the executives lit up. They're like, yeah, you're right. That's exactly the messaging I want. But they were following an industry norm that was making them look just like everybody else. And it wasn't resonating for today's audience that you're trying to reach. So that's what I actually find that part about your industry just so fascinating because there's like this standard of behavior that everybody follows. And then everybody wonders why they're not standing out.
Oh yeah, I like the part in the book that you revamped their marketing, their website. So you actually had this lady, a lady first of all, in a convertible with her hands up in the air.
Yeah.
That was that's a completely different rebrand. I remember my first year at Arthur Anderson in Chicago, we took a class picture, and everybody had on the black suit, except for the one lady in the white suit. And I was showing my friend, he goes, "Oh, that must be the manager," because the manager realizes there's nothing to lose by being different.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, I actually find your industry fascinating for that reason. It has to be in the top two of emotional industries. I mean, it's just so emotionally driven. Like the way to separate yourself from everybody else and the way to stand out and connect deeply with your clients is to tap into their emotions.
So you accountants out there, go contra market, put a little color, get rid of these black suits. So Jeffrey, I have to ask, so when it comes to being self-employed, where do we go wrong? Where do we go wrong in not being able to build our business and really expand beyond our number one? What is the thing that we do absolutely wrong?
Try to do everything yourself. I mean, there has to be a point because it's always the hardest thing. The hardest thing is to convince someone, particularly when they're on the earlier stages, to invest in the support they need. Hey, I'm a coach, right? So I'm every day, I'm trying to convince somebody that it's an investment worth making. And that's coming from a sincere place, and I make sure that it does because I'm very clear about who my ideal clients are. I don't want to work with just everybody. I want to work with people that together we can make the maximum value. So I'm not looking to convert everybody into a client that reaches out and talks to me. So it has to come from a sincere, but the truth of the matter is, in order to be scalable, in order to grow, you have to get outside of yourself. I talk in the book, one of the daily habits I speak of, and the book is broken up, as you know, the book is broken up into three main sections, which is personal development, business strategies, and daily habits. One of those daily habits I talk about is trust. And one of my advanced readers really challenged me that how is trust a daily habit? Like they don't see, and I said, when you're self-employed, you need to work on your ability to trust every day. Trust in other people, trust that people can get things done as well as you, trust that there are powers at work on your behalf, trust in something bigger than you are. Now, believe me, it's a daily habit for a lot of us. And I know that to be true because of how many self-employed and entrepreneurs, they say, oh, no, I trust, I trust, I have faith, I have trust, I trust in other people. But undoubtedly, their behavior and the way they're carrying themselves is the weight of the world is on their shoulders. And it's like you don't have trust if you're running your business feeling the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And the bigger problem is that you can only carry so much weight. And that's what's holding back your business. For as long as you believe that everything is up to you, everything is on your shoulders, that you're getting everything done, you're limited by what you can carry. The only way to expand your business is to invest in support people, a team around you, to support in coaching, to change your mindsets, to invest in people who can lay out a business model that you may not be able to see yet. The only way you can grow is to invest in your future.
Oh, yeah.
It's the thing that people go, and I think, you can get your business to a degree, you can get your business to a point of on your own. I've heard many people say, I mean, you can get your solopreneur practice up to probably $250,000 by yourself, right? It's a level that a lot of people get stuck at and they wonder why they're not going any further. And it's almost always because it's at that level that's really when you need to invest. Now, you can get your business, you can get it going and you can get it moving along by yourself as a solopreneur to a degree. But you will hit a wall where there's no way that you can become bigger or scalable without expanding your team. And that, I think, is where a lot of people go wrong and why they stay stuck at the same level for longer than they need to, is because they don't see it being possible to invest in expansion.
Oh yeah, definitely, Jeffrey. And especially when you're talking about the self-employed realm, when you have that party or that company that's under 5 people, as you say, most people become self-employed because they absolutely love what they do, right? They're
Yeah.
amazing artisans, even handyman, that's an art for them, right? And
Yeah.
you were a photographer, that's how you became, you got your intro into marketing was being being a photographer for high net worth individuals, right?
Mhm.
And so it's an art. And when it's an art and it's an artist, there's always that feeling that nobody can do it better than me, right? Nobody can do this better than me because this is my baby. This is what I was born to do in the world, right? So how do you begin to expand that trust in order to be able to work with others so that you can start to leverage their talent so that you can build your business?
Yeah. First, to hone into what is your zone of genius, like where, I mean, having been in the photo industry for so many decades, in so many ways, digital did so much, the industry going digital did so much damage to the industry, but not in ways that people think. It's not because everybody has a camera on the cell phone. That is actually, I don't think, the biggest threat to the photo industry. The biggest problem is Photoshop, because suddenly photographers that made money behind the camera got sucked into the intrigue of learning Photoshop. I never did, as I still to this day know very little about Photoshop, because I knew right from the beginning I was not going to let that suck me down the drain, because that's not, I don't make money sitting behind the camera, behind the computer. I make money in front of people that I'm photographing and in the sales appointments. So that's all I did. So I made sure I had a full-time retoucher on staff whose shoulder I might look over every now and then, but I always hired really good people and let them be. I put a lot of effort into the interviewing process, and not just on their skill set, but how I related to them, whether they were on the same page. I actually, part of my interview process, because I worked with such high net worth individuals, part of my interview process was usually, I had such a great relationship with my clients. I would call certain clients that lived in the most exclusive neighborhood, gated, guards, the whole bit. And I would call one of them and say, could you get me in the guard, in the gate? I'm doing an interview. And, certain clients knew exactly what I was doing. I would take these people I was interviewing through this neighborhood just to watch their reaction, because I wanted them to have that delicate balance of respect and appreciation for somebody's success, but not ooh and ah, and not have an attitude. Not have an attitude. Actually, I've only let 2 people in 36 years. I've only let 2 people go, and one was because I didn't catch this in the interview process, apparently. But this individual I hired had such a negative attitude about people with money. It's like, you can't work for me if that's who I serve, because you're throwing out all these stereotypes based on where you're coming from that isn't true of the people that we serve. So I would literally expose them to what they were going to be exposed to see what their emotional response was. Because I know part of my success was, I would congratulate people on their success and I would acknowledge their success, but I wasn't intimidated by them. I wasn't overly impressed by them. They were still just people who got up in the morning like the rest of us, but I respected them, and I certainly held no judgment or assumptions about anything I had ever heard. I let who they were and who they truly were to present itself, and I decided who I worked on based on that. So I think, it's you have to expand by expanding your team, by expanding your mindsets, and that's the team within your business, as well as what's the support. What kind of team do you build outside of it? There's an African proverb that you probably know. It goes something like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. right? Business is a long haul game, and it takes trusting other people, expanding what you can offer to people by allowing other people's skill sets and mindsets to play into and add to what you do. But it's also the hardest thing, it seems, to do, to convince. I will say something about your industry, though, that really impresses me, is that the financial industry is used to being a part of an ecosystem. Right? You're used to working with businesses as a vendor for other businesses, as a contract for their businesses. There's a way in which I find the financial industry is very used to being a part of a bigger business ecosystem that a lot of industries are not, and photographers in particular. I find one of the biggest challenges to get photographers to think about being scalable is because they tend to be silo-minded. They're not used to being a part of a bigger ecosystem. So they will always turn to themselves for, I can do my own bookkeeping, I can do my own website. Where I find the financial industry, those that I've worked with, because they're used to being a part of an ecosystem, they're more likely to hire other people to improve their business. And I think that's a very positive thing about your industry that I think really strengthens the opportunities.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we realized, we're not going to be able to do everything alone. And usually, if you're a financial person or a numbers person, you're usually using that left side of the brain.
Yeah.
And we know we need a little help on the right sometimes in order
Yeah.
to go where we need to go. But you said so many juicy morsels in that, Jeffrey. Oh my gosh, so many juicy morsels. Just one thing that you said was when you were starting to scale, right? And you started to bring in team members. Yeah, you could have got absorbed in the Photoshop, but the reality is you decided to focus on the one thing that could drive your business forward. And for you, that was being in front of the camera, being in front of the customer, making that customer feel like, oh my gosh, this is my guy. He gets me. He's going to capture my good side. You know what I mean? And that's important to him. And you really honed in on that one thing. So entrepreneurs, that's very key, juicy morsels from Jeffrey right there, is focus on the one thing, not the technology, right? The technology is not going to necessarily make you money. Let your people do that. Focus on the one thing that's going to drive your business forward. In Jeffrey's case, at that point in his life, it was sales. So that was amazing there. And then, and also just building that trust, right? And you can't do it alone, right? In order to scale and grow. So some juicy morsels there. And thanks for the compliment on the financial industry. So, you accountants out there that are listening too, that's a good thing about us. Yeah. We're ahead.
In a lot of ways, yes.
Thank you. So Jeffrey, as I start to wind down, I love to ask our guests this: if there was one piece of advice that you could leave the next rising entrepreneur, what would that advice be?
Gosh, we covered so much great advice. I mean, certainly trusting other people would certainly be one of the advice. I would say, it's be prepared for the personal connectedness. I think the biggest shift I have seen in the business world in the 36 years I've been in business, which I think is a really positive one, is that people make a decision who to do business with from more of an energetic, how I feel about that person, than they used to. I built, and I can speak to this firsthand, I built a business as a photographer in the 80s through the 90s, built on an image, a brand image. The business was in my name. I built a personal brand. I built a reputation as being the go-to photographer for a certain clientele. I wasn't, but I felt like I probably could have been the biggest jerk and people would have hired me anyway because I was the guy to have. And I know that because the clients I was working with, they were working with designers, interior designers, that they would openly say to me, he or she drives me crazy, but they're the one to have. That does not fly nowadays, right? You no longer get hired because you're the best at what you do. You get hired because people like to do business with you. They feel aligned with your values. So my best piece of advice is to really be attuned to the energy of the people you want to serve. And that may sound woo-woo to some people, but I'm telling you, it is so important to, and particularly now as we have gone through this crisis and as we start to recover, it is so important to be sensitive to other people's perspectives, whether you agree with it or not. But if you believe you can serve them, if you want to serve them, you have to be empathetic and sensitive to where they're at, if that's how you want to serve them. So I think my best piece of advice is to be empathetic, to be that person that's highly sensitive to what's going around you. The more tangible side, it'll also make you more marketable. One of the things I say to my clients when I start coaching them is like, particularly those that I'm working on for brand messaging, and people that come to me, they know they want to start a self-employed business. They're not even sure what they want the business to be, or they know that they don't have a strong brand image. And I was like, well, what I'm looking for is the intersection of meaning and marketability. You want a business that is based on what's meaningful to you. We have to find does that intersect with what the market wants. To do that, you have to be highly sensitive to what the world wants and needs at that time. And you have to, as a business, be willing to stay in touch with that all the time. So my biggest piece of advice is to be highly sensitive to the world around you, the people that you want to serve. You're not meant for everybody. You are meant for your ideal clients, but you can't serve them unless you have the capacity to really understand them. And I think that's essential.
I love that. So just, know that the world is a moving target right now. And I think that the world has never been moving so fast. I mean, what important a year ago
Yeah.
is completely different now, right?
Yes.
Especially when you have a pandemic where countries right now are really struggling
Yeah.
and really looking at, how is the world shifting and shifting your message to cater to the needs of what's happening right now. So that's beautiful, extremely wise advice, Jeffrey, for that.
Thank
And
you.
my last question is, so, you have shared some amazing wisdom with us. You are an amazing best-selling author. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Times two, because he's got lingo, as well as the new book, Self-Employed Life. Um, what is the best way to reach out to you, to get a hold of you, to work with you? What is the best way to do that?
Mhm. So one of two ways, although they're connected. So my main website is jeffreyshaw.com. But if you are self-employed and that's the world you want to know more about, then go to the selfemployedlife.me, because that's it's a page on my website, but it's like the world of self-employment, right? That's where you find out about my services. That's where the book, the Self-Employed Summit, I just organized and hosted for 2 days, which we'll do again next year. I have an advocacy group, Voices of the Self-Employed, so that I can be an advocate for legislation in the future. And there's several things coming up that will need to be addressed to protect self-employed people. I write articles for various publications, more so now for Entrepreneur Magazine. So the world of self-employment and all things pertaining to that can be found at the selfemployedlife.me.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And I have a special book because of technology. It actually shows clear. So I'm going
I
to have
love
Jeffrey show his.
that.
You've got to get this book. You can get it from Amazon, The Self-Employed Life. And beautiful blue, very, if you had a hard day, you want to just relax with that aqua blue. It doesn't do very good for green screen, but it's great for nighttime reading. And like I said, I felt like I was getting like $1,000 coaching session just from reading chapter 1. So this is an amazing book. Check it out. Amazon.com, Self-Employed Life. Jeffrey Shaw sounds exactly the way it's spelled, and definitely check out that book. It hit #1 new release. So definitely best-selling book. Get that book. Plus get Lingo. Lingo is one of my all-time favorites. Plus this one now. So definitely check that book out and read it and learn more about Jeffrey and learn how to propel your self-employed business forward in 2021. Thank you, Jeffrey, so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me and for your kind words. You're really a gem. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Goodbye, everyone. I'll see you next time. May the profits be with you.